Sensation. What you are about to hear can overturn your understanding of death and what awaits us after it. The great clairvoyant and telepath Wolf Messing, who was called the man enigma of the 20th century, once shared with his closest students knowledge that stunned even the most prepared among them. It was not another prediction about the future, and not a story of his unusual experiences. It was a revelation about what happens to the soul of a person in the first 40 days after death. He said words that struck like a blow. You think that death is the end, but in reality, it is only the beginning, and everything that follows is far more frightening and at the same time more magnificent than you can imagine. From that moment on, his story turned into a journey into those realms where the living are usually not admitted. Messing claimed that the last moments of earthly life are merely a transition, a door behind which trials await the soul, trials none of us even suspect exist. He described the first minutes after death as the state of a lost child in an unfamiliar city. The soul sees everything, its own body, the weeping relatives, the hospital room or the house where life was cut short. It hears their voices, feels their emotions, but cannot touch them. This is a state of helplessness that both frightens and liberates at the same time. I saw, said Messing, how souls reached out for a glass of water, tried to embrace loved ones, to speak with them, and in horror realized that they had become invisible. For them, life still continues, but for the living, it is already over. These words astonishingly resonate with modern stories of people who experienced clinical death. The American woman Pam Reynolds, who underwent a unique brain operation, later said that she heard the doctor's conversations when her heart and brain were completely stopped. She described the instruments and the words of the surgeons with accuracy that amazed the researchers. Her consciousness had left the body and observed what was happening. Thousands of similar testimonies from around the world coincide with what Messing spoke of. The soul does not disappear immediately. The first hours and days after death are a period when a person still feels alive, but his world is already different. Messing asserted that the first 3 days are the most important stage. The soul is still connected with the body and the familiar world. It is precisely during these days that strange dreams appear among relatives, a sense of presence in the house, sudden noises, and even the falling of objects. This is not imagination. This is the soul, which seems to cry out, I am still here. Modern NDE researchers confirm this. Millions of people describe the same experience, leaving the body a sensation of floating above their body, observing events and trying to shout. Some feel peace, some terror, but all understand. Consciousness does not die with the body. On the third day, according to Messing, the first great trial comes. The soul is met by guides. Sometimes they are angels, sometimes figures we have never known, but who evoke trust. They begin to lead it into a new world, where everything will depend on the trace left by the person's life. From the 3rd to the 9th day, he said, the soul is shown its own life, as if before its eyes unfolds a film where deeds, words, thoughts, and feelings come alive. But this is not judgment in the usual sense. This is a meeting with oneself. The soul feels everything it ever caused others to experience, said Messing. If you did good, you will see how it shines with light and eases your way. If you caused pain, you will have to live it again, through the eyes of your victims. That is why many cultures of the world paid special attention to the 9th day after death. This is the moment when the soul faces its shadow, its fears and mistakes. For some, it becomes liberation, for others, a trap. On the 9th day, the soul seems to enter a fiery river of memories. Messing said, this is not punishment and not reward. This is the moment of truth. The soul sees everything without illusions, without masks, and nothing can be hidden. It is precisely then that it encounters not only its own deeds, but also the energy of its lineage. According to Messing, death does not sever ties, on the contrary. It returns a person home. The soul is met by ancestors. Even those it never knew in life come as guardians of the memory of the family line. It is an amazing feeling of recognition. Faces you have never seen on earth suddenly seem familiar. They show the soul that its actions are woven into the fate of the family and generations. Modern researchers call this genetic or ancestral memory, but Messing spoke of something else. It is not genes, it is energy. He told stories of a child born 50 years after the death of an ancestor, who began to use the same expressions, love the same activities, and repeat his choices. This is not coincidence. The soul carries not only personal experience, but also the experience of its lineage. One of the most famous stories in the United States is the case of James Leininger. From early childhood, he spoke about airplanes of the Second World War. He named details of construction that a child could not have known. He claimed that he had been a pilot killed in battle. His parents decided to check the facts, and it turned out that everything he said matched the real biography of an American pilot. This case was studied by psychologists and historians and became a sensation. Such stories confirm Messing's words. Death does not erase personality. The soul preserves an energetic imprint, which manifests itself again and again. Every action, every thought, every emotion is a record, Messing said. It does not disappear. It becomes part of the energy that returns either in a new life or in the fates of our children or in what people call karma. Karma, in his words, is not punishment. It is learning. If a person lived in evil and hatred, the soul is drawn to the layers where the same prevails. If he lived with love, his path is lit by light. That is why he warned, the 9th day is a turning point. The soul faces its own fears and conscience. This is its second judgment, not the judgment of external forces, but of itself. But the culmination comes on the 40th day. This is the crossroads of destinies, Messing said. The soul stands at a fork where there are no roads, but there are streams of energy, and it is they that determine its further path. In orthodoxy, it is believed that until the 40th day the soul travels, meets angels and demons. In Buddhism, 40 days are described as bardo, the time when the soul must remember its true nature. In Islam, it is believed that in this period angels ask the soul key questions. All these traditions coincide in a striking way. 40 days is the time when the fate of the soul is decided. Messing explained that during this time, the soul is especially sensitive to the love of the living. I saw, he said, how souls rose into the light when they heard prayers and gratitude, and I saw how they got stuck when there were only cries and despair around. That is why in all cultures there is a custom to honor the 40th day. It is not a tribute to tradition, but real help to the soul. To make this clearer, Messing gave stories of people who experienced clinical death. One man said that he saw his body from the outside and felt the emotions of his relatives. Only when they let me go, he said, did I move on. This confirms the most important thing. The soul after death hears us. It feels not words but energy, love or hatred, gratitude or fear. Messing said, the hardest thing for the soul is not pain and not fear. The hardest thing is to be forgotten. That is why the 40th day is the moment of truth. The living can help the soul cross the crossroads of destinies. Their love becomes wings. But here arises the main question. What trace do we ourselves leave behind? After all, death is a mirror. It shows not what we accumulated, but what we gave to others. On the 40th day, the soul approaches the point that Messing called the crossroads of destinies. This is the moment when the veil between worlds becomes thinner than ever. The soul is no longer tied to the body, but it still feels earthly connections. It is precisely here that it is decided, where it will go next. 40 days is no accident, Messing said. It is a secret cycle, a time given to the soul for awareness, purification, and choice. In the Bible we find the same number: 40 days of Christ's fasting, 40 years of Israel's wandering in the desert, 40 days of Moses on Mount Sinai. In Buddhism and the Tibetan Book of the Dead, this is the period of Bardo. In Islam and Orthodoxy, this is the time when the soul especially needs the prayers of the living. Coincidence? Messing claimed, "This knowledge is older than all religions." He said, "In these 40 days the soul is like a student at an exam. There is only one question: what have you learned in life?" After this period, the soul faces 3 possible scenarios. The first path, upward, into the luminous spheres. There it unites with angels, mentors, and those who have loved it for centuries. This is a state of peace, warmth, and love. The second path, downward, into the dense layers of the astral, where the shadows of passions and fears reign. There end up the souls that did not let go of their desires and resentments. These souls become what we call ghosts. And the third path, return. The soul begins to prepare for a new incarnation. Sometimes it chooses by itself where and to whom to be born. Sometimes it is drawn by karma, the energetic imprint of deeds and thoughts left in a past life. Messing said, "We build our own future, not fate, not chance, but our choices, our feelings, and our thoughts." To explain this, he told stories of children who remembered their past lives. One boy in India claimed that he was a merchant from a neighboring village. He described a house, a family, and even a safe where money was hidden. The parents checked, and everything matched. In America, there is the famous story of a child who suddenly began to talk about the Second World War. He named pilots' names and military bases. His family checked the facts, and they turned out to be true. These stories are proof that the soul continues its journey without losing memory. It carries with it experience, mistakes, and love. Messing asserted, "Karma is not punishment. It is the record of your life, and after death you read it like an open book." He explained, "If a person lived with love and compassion, his energy would be light, and the soul would rise into the light. If with anger and cynicism, the soul would be drawn into layers of suffering. But the most interesting, even mistakes can be redeemed. The love of the living can pull the soul out, even if it itself is lost," he said. Messing emphasized that after the 40th day, the soul enters the field of the lineage. This is not a metaphor, but reality. The soul feels the energy of its ancestors and becomes part of their strength. Sometimes it takes upon itself the unfinished tasks of the family line. Sometimes it heals traumas that lasted for generations. He explained the phenomenon when a boy born decades after the death of his grandfather suddenly begins to manifest his habits. This is not genes, this is the energetic memory of the lineage. The soul becomes part of it. After death we are not met by emptiness, Messing said. We are met by the family of spirit, those who have walked with us for centuries. These words shocked listeners, for they meant one thing: none of us leaves alone. But the main thing is not to fear death, but to think about life. Messing said, "Death teaches us to value time. We think we have years, but in reality we have only a moment, and it is precisely this moment that decides what the trace of the soul will be." After the 40th day, the soul enters a new cycle. It no longer clings to the body, no longer wanders near the house and loved ones. Now its attention shifts to eternity. "The fate of the soul," said Messing, "does not depend on how it was buried, but on the intention with which a person lived." He asserted, intention is even more important than actions. A person may make mistakes, fall, suffer, but if within them burned a spark of goodness, that energy will push their soul into the light. But if life was filled with anger and cynicism, the soul will descend into the heavy layers where darkness and suffering reign. This is karma. Karma is not punishment, not retribution. It is the imprint of thoughts, feelings, and actions that forms the subtle body of the soul. After death, The soul reads this record, and it cannot deceive itself. To explain this, Messing gave stories. In India, there was a boy who at 3 years old insisted that he was a merchant from a neighboring village. He described the house, the family, the place where the safe was. Everything matched. In America, there was a boy who suddenly began to speak about the Second World War. He knew the names of bases and pilots. Historians confirmed such people really lived. These children remember, said Messing, because their souls have not yet closed the door of past lives. He asserted, death is not a period, it is a comma. Life is a book, and each death is only a transition to a new chapter. But there is another phenomenon he spoke about especially often, ancestral memory. After death, the soul enters the field of the lineage. This is the energy of generations, the consciousness of ancestors, their experience and strength. The soul becomes part of it. This explains why children sometimes manifest the habits of grandfathers and great-grandfathers whom they never knew. One boy was born 50 years after the death of an ancestor, and suddenly began to use the same expressions, love the same crafts, make the same choices. This is not coincidence, said Messing. The soul is woven into the fabric of the lineage. He asserted, after death we are met not by emptiness, but by the family line. Even those ancestors whom we never knew surround us. They await us at home. This shocked listeners, for it meant we are never alone. Even in death we are met by the family of spirit. Messing said, every thought is a brick of your posthumous house. What it will be like depends only on you. He explained that the soul carries with it an energetic signature. It is the invisible record of everything we radiated: laughter, pain, love, grudges, kindness. This signature does not erase, it remains with the soul forever. Death is a mirror. It shows not what you had, but what you gave to the world, he said. That is why he always repeated to his students, death teaches us to value time. We do not have eternity on earth. We have only a moment. And in that moment we decide what the trace of our soul will be. He would raise his eyes and say, imagine that after death you will see not wealth and houses, but the feelings of the people around you. What will they remember about you? Warmth, love, or pain and resentment? That is your true capital. These words made people fall silent, because in them there was no mysticism, only truth. Messing finished his confession like this: we do not disappear. We return home, to those who loved us for centuries, and all that we can take with us is the trace of our soul. The sensation that shocked everyone who heard the words of Wolf Messing was that death is not the end, but a return. But a return to where? He said, after the 40th day, the soul stands at the crossroads of fate. This is the moment when there are no more masks, no excuses. There is only you and your trace. At this instant, the soul feels everything it has created. If it was love, gratitude, care, the energy lifts it higher. If it was hatred, envy, anger, it pulls downward into the layers of suffering. But there is also a third path. The soul may prepare for a new incarnation. Messing explained, we ourselves write our destiny, not someone above but us. Every thought, every word, every emotion, these are the bricks of the house in which we will live after death. These words coincided with what thousands of people who experienced clinical death recounted. One man said, I realized that the body was no more, but I was. I felt the pain of my loved ones. I heard their thoughts. And only when they let me go did I move on. In different cultures, the same stories. In Christianity, the 40 days are the time when the soul passes through ordeals and meets angels. In Buddhism, the bardo, where the soul seeks the light. In Islam, 40 days when the veil between worlds is thin. In shamanic traditions, the passage through fire and trials by spirits. Everywhere the meaning is the same. In this time the soul is especially sensitive, and it is precisely the prayers of the living, words of love and gratitude that become its wings. Messing warned, "The most terrible thing for the soul is not hell and not punishment. The most terrible thing is to be forgotten." And so he said, "Remember your dead, but not with tears and despair, with gratitude. Love is the only thing that reaches them." He told that he saw souls who suffered in darkness, but suddenly rose upward when they heard the prayers and light of the living. "Love is the energy that nothing can stop," he repeated. And here arises the main question: what trace will we leave? Messing told his students, "Imagine that tomorrow your 40th day comes. Your soul approaches the crossroads of fate, and it will see not your money, not houses, not cars. It will see only the feelings of people around you. What will they remember about you? What will they feel when they say your name? That will be your judgment." He always ended his speeches with a pause. And then he said, "Death teaches us to value time. We have less of it than we think. Every second turns into a trace, and one day that trace will become your road." These words pierced to the depth of the soul, because they touched everyone. And now I am speaking to you, yes, to you, the one watching this video. Think, if tomorrow were your 40th day, what trace would your soul see? Light or darkness? Love or emptiness? This decision is made only by you, here and now. Live so that your soul can later soar. Live so that those who remember you smile through tears. Live so that your trace will be light, because death is not the end. It is a door, and what will be beyond that door depends only on you. 40 days. This is not just a date on the calendar. This is a secret path where the fate of the soul is decided. Wolf Messing showed death is not the end, but an exam, after which the soul either rises to the light or remains in the shadows. And now the main question for you: what trace will you leave? For one day your soul will be looking at your life through the eyes of eternity.